You ever have one of those days where you wake up, look outside, sip your morning coffee, and suddenly think, man, I really hope no one's trying to steal my land today? Yeah, most people don't deal with that. But apparently, I do. My name's Louis, and I own 1,500 acres of land out by the lake. It's quiet, peaceful, and honestly, it's the one thing in this world that never stressed me out. This land has been in my family long before most kids in the nearby community were even born. I grew up on it, learned to fish in its lake, learned to drive on its dirt roads, and nearly broke my neck climbing trees on it. So yeah, I'm a little attached. What I did not grow up with was an HOA. For a long time, it was just open land, a family cabin, and a bunch of old deer that acted like they paid rent. Then, about 10 years ago, a fancy luxury neighborhood popped up on the far side of the lake. You know the type: stone gates, homes with 10-car garages, wine fridges bigger than my entire pantry, and neighbors who argue about whose lawn guy is using the wrong blade height. They also came with something else, the HOA. Now, I didn't think much of them at first. Let rich folks have their rules. Fine by me. If you want to tell grown adults what color their mailbox flag can be, hey, you do you. Just leave me and my land alone. Spoiler alert, they did not leave me alone. Before we get into the insanity they caused, let me set the stage right. My land is huge: 1,500 acres of trees, hills, and lakefront. I'm talking enough space to get lost in your own backyard. It has 3 natural springs, a big flat field where my granddad used to keep cattle, and a stretch of shoreline so pretty it looks like one of those screensavers people pretend is inspiring. The HOA saw all that beauty and decided, oh well, that should be ours. And trust me, you're not ready for how far they went. These folks really tried to steal it, not borrow it, not negotiate for it. Straight up take it like they were in some budget version of Game of Thrones, Suburban Edition. Now, before you hear the full story, let me warn you, everything you're about to hear has drama, legal nonsense, bad decisions, worse haircuts looking at you, HOA president, and enough plot twists to qualify as a daytime soap if your HOA has ever annoyed you. Just know mine raised the bar so high it left the Earth's atmosphere. And here's the best part: the hook, the teaser, the thing that made this whole ride worth it. They thought they could steal my land, so I took theirs. Yep, I'm not kidding. These people, this HOA pulled one of the most illegal, ridiculous, cartoon villain moves you can imagine, and I decided to give them a taste of their own medicine. Legal taste. The kind that comes with paperwork, signatures, and a judge who looks like he's 2 minutes away from throwing his gavel at somebody. See, they tried to sell my 1,500 acres behind my back. So, I legally sold off their $10 million lakefront mansions, multiple of them. Don't worry. I'll tell you exactly how all of that went down, chapter by chapter. But for now, let me bring you back to where this all started long before the lawsuits, the surveys, the shouting matches, and the HOA president screaming at me like a chihuahua with anger issues. Back then, I really didn't give the HOA much attention. They were on their side of the lake. I was on mine. We didn't mix, and honestly, I was fine keeping it that way. I wasn't trying to join their community events. I wasn't trying to get invited to their wine tastings that probably smelled like expensive grapes and disappointment. I was just minding my own business. But every now and then, I'd catch one of their board members poking around my property line. Not stepping on it, just leaning close enough to make me wonder if their toes were over the boundary. They'd smile, wave, pretend they were birdwatching, which was weird. Because we don't exactly have rare birds, unless you count that one duck with a limp. Little did I know, all that curiosity was leading to something much bigger. Because behind closed doors, the HOA was already planning their move. And trust me, it wasn't a friendly one. If you ever want to know how blind greed works, just picture a group of people sitting in a meeting room with one agenda: how do we grab more land without paying for it? What they didn't expect was that I am not the kind of person who rolls over and lets people walk all over me. And they definitely didn't expect that by trying to take my acres, they were actually giving me a loophole, one that would eventually put their $1 million lakefront homes right into my hands. So buckle up, because in the next chapters, I'm going to break down how the whole went from threatening letters to illegal land deals to me legally owning everything they thought was untouchable. This is the story of how a quiet guy with 1,500 acres took down an entire HOA empire. And trust me, they had it coming. Before the whole drama, before the lawsuits, before the day I sold off mansions like I was hosting my own personal millionaire yard sale, there was just the land. My land, all 1,500 acres of it. And trust me, this wasn't some random patch of dirt I picked up at a discount. This land has history. It's basically the family heirloom nobody can misplace. Some families pass down jewelry, old photos, maybe a car. My family, we passed down land big enough to host 3 music festivals at the same time. The land came from my granddad. He bought it back when you could buy a whole mountain for the price of a fancy TV today. He worked the land, fished on it, camped on it, and told stories on it. The type of man who could skin a fish in one hand and tell you about the good old days with the other. When he passed, it came to my dad. And when my dad passed, it came to me. So yeah, it's more than just property. It's family. It's memories. Its roots deeper than the oak trees growing on it. Growing up, I spent most of my time exploring the place. I knew every creek bend and every weird-shaped rock. I knew where the deer liked to hang out, and where the snakes liked to hang out, mostly so I could avoid them. I always had this dream that one day I'd build a little cabin by the lake, maybe open a campground, or even start a nature retreat. You know, something peaceful. Something simple. And that lake. Oh man, the lake is the crown jewel of the whole thing. Clear water, smooth as glass at sunrise, and fish just dumb enough to let me catch them. The kind of lake people take pictures of and post with captions like healing vibes. That lake alone is worth a fortune. And so is everything around it. Because let's talk value for a second. My 1,500 acres aren't just pretty. They're strategic. The land has lake access. It has timber. It has mineral rights. And it sits right next to a booming luxury community where the average home price is, you must be joking. If you want to know how valuable the land is, picture this. I had surveyors tell me that developers would fight each other WWE style to get a piece of it. They said it politely, but I could tell they meant it. There's oak, birch, and pine all over the place, which timber companies drool over. The mineral rights under the land have been untouched for decades, and the recreational potential, off the charts. Hunting, yes. Fishing, yes. Hiking, yes. Getting lost and questioning your life choices. Also yes. So now imagine this beautiful, untouched land sitting quietly, and right next to it, a row of $10 million mansions that look like they were built for characters from a movie who say things like, "Can someone warm the pool? It feels like peasant temperature." Yep. That luxury neighborhood is where the whole lives. The villains of our story. They've got homes with private docks, 3-story windows, custom stone fireplaces, and driveways that make you wonder if they're trying to compete with the airport runway. Each backyard looks like a magazine cover, and the HOA, they run the place like it's a kingdom. Rules on top of rules. They probably have a sub-rule for how long you can look at your neighbor's house before it counts as unfriendly eye contact. And from day one, I noticed something. They really liked looking over at my land. At first, it didn't bother me. A few board members would wave at me from across the lake like they were trying to be friendly. I'd wave back, because I'm not rude, but something about their smiles always felt the sweet, like when someone compliments you right before asking if they can borrow your truck. Then they started sending polite letters. "Hello, neighbor. We just want to confirm your land boundaries. Hello again. Do you have plans for long-term development? Hi, it's us again. Would you consider selling a portion of your shoreline?" Every letter was nicer than the last. Very sugared. Too sugared. You know when someone gives you a cupcake that's so sweet it hurts your teeth? That was them. I ignored the letters at first because nothing they asked really mattered to me. My land was my land. I wasn't planning on selling anything. But the HOA wasn't used to hearing no. And once they realized I wasn't interested, they switched strategies. They got quiet, and quiet HOA people are dangerous HOA people. Suddenly I'd see random HOA board members going on walks near my boundary line, heavy emphasis on the quotation marks there. I caught one guy using binoculars like he was scouting a military target. Another time, I found a couple of them with a huge paper map spread out over the hood of their car. When I walked by, they snapped it shut like teenagers hiding a magazine. The signs were all there. They wanted my land, badly. At the time, I figured they were just planning something dumb, like expanding their walking trail or trying to claim they accidentally mowed a little too far. Annoying. But whatever. What I didn't know was that they were already planning something way bigger. Something illegal. Something they thought they could get away with because they had money, power, and a whole community behind them. But they forgot one thing: just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm blind. And their little obsession with my land, yeah, that was just the beginning. I always knew the HOA was nosy, but I didn't know they were the Olympic-level kind of nosy until they started contacting me like I'd somehow signed up for their newsletter. And trust me, I did not. It started simple. One bright morning, I get a letter in my mailbox that says something like, "Hello, neighbor. We've recently discovered possible jurisdiction confusion regarding your land." Jurisdiction confusion? Buddy, there's no confusion. Your rules apply to your neighborhood. My rules apply to my 1,500 acres. Boom. Solved. I ignored it, because honestly it sounded like one of those emails people get about updating your car warranty. But then a second letter arrived. This time with bolded text. And if you know anything about HOA letters, bold text means they think they're serious. "We believe your property may fall within HOA regulatory boundaries." Nope, still wrong. But nice try. Then the phone calls started. Someone from their property standards committee left me a voicemail speaking like she was narrating a crime documentary. "Hello. This is Jana from the Lakeside Community HOA. We need to discuss your shoreline positioning and how it affects our shared easement rights. Ma'am, your easement rights are about as shared as my toothbrush." Meaning, they are not. At first, I tried to be calm. I'm a friendly person. I don't go around picking fights with people who wear matching polo shirts to meetings. So I called back, just to clear things up. "Hey, Jana, I think there's been a mistake. My land isn't part of your HOA." She paused like I just told her the earth was flat. "Well, we'll have to review that," she said. "Review what? Reality." Anyway, I hung up and thought, okay, cool, that's the end of it. Spoiler, it was not the end of it. Because soon enough, HOA reps started showing up in person on my land acting like they were on an episode of CSI, Country Edition. One guy came dressed in khakis and a tucked-in shirt, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Just doing an inspection," he said. "Inspection of what?" "The squirrels. My land isn't under their control. They have no business stepping foot on it." But they kept pushing their imaginary boundaries further and further. One day I found tire tracks from a little HOA-branded golf cart on my property line. Let me repeat that. They drove their sandwich-sized golf cart onto my land like it was a battlefield vehicle. Then came the letters with more personality. Failure to comply with HOA review could result in fines. Fines? For what? Not living in their neighborhood hard enough. Another one said, "You may be violating community maintenance standards." Brother, my land has trees older than your entire HOA. I highly doubt their standards apply to 60-year-old pines. But this wasn't just letters. It got weirder. People reported seeing HOA board members walking around the edge of my property at night with flashlights. One neighbor told me he thought they were hunting for a lost dog. I told him, no. That is the HOA. They're probably measuring my dirt or something. And every time, I tried to stay polite. I tried to stay patient. I tried to stay calm. I'd call and say, "Hey guys, I think you're confused. I'm not part of the HOA." But they would reply with things like, "Well, the boundaries are unclear. We're reviewing the plats." We're consulting legal guidance. We're forming a committee. Forming a committee is HOA. Language for, we're about to be annoying. But the real moment I knew things were getting out of hand was when I found two HOA reps with measuring tape, standing by my dock. They didn't even look surprised to see me. One of them just said, "We're just confirming distance from shoreline to structure." Confirming what? This is my dock, built on my land, paid for with my money. You don't confirm anything except your way back to the neighborhood you came from. And still, I kept trying to be decent about it. I sent polite responses. I explained boundaries. I even printed out a copy of the county map with a big green highlighter circle around my land and dropped it off at their office like I was turning in homework. But the tension was rising. Every letter felt stronger. Every call sounded colder, and every visit felt more like they were preparing to take over. The signs were all there. They wanted my land, badly. At the time, I figured they were just planning something dumb, like expanding their walking trail or trying to claim they accidentally mowed a little too far. Annoying. But whatever. What I didn't know was that they were already planning something way bigger. Something illegal. Something they thought they could get away with because they had money, power, and a whole community behind them. But they forgot one thing: just because I'm quiet doesn't mean I'm blind. And their little obsession with my land, yeah, that was just the beginning. I always knew the HOA was nosy, but I didn't know they were the Olympic-level kind of nosy until they started contacting me like I'd somehow signed up for their newsletter. And trust me, I did not. It started simple. One bright morning, I get a letter in my mailbox that says something like, "Hello, neighbor. We've recently discovered possible jurisdiction confusion regarding your land." Jurisdiction confusion. Buddy, there's no confusion. Your rules apply to your neighborhood. My rules apply to my 1,500 acres. Boom. Solved. I ignored it, because honestly it sounded like one of those emails people get about updating your car warranty. But then a second letter arrived. This time with bolded text. And if you know anything about HOA letters, bold text means they think they're serious. "We believe your property may fall within HOA regulatory boundaries." Nope, still wrong, but nice try. Then the phone calls started. Someone from their property standards committee left me a voicemail speaking like she was narrating a crime documentary. "Hello. This is Jana from the Lakeside Community HOA. We need to discuss your shoreline positioning and how it affects our shared easement rights. Ma'am, your easement rights are about as shared as my toothbrush." Meaning, they are not. At first, I tried to be calm. I'm a friendly person. I don't go around picking fights with people who wear matching polo shirts to meetings. So I called back, just to clear things up. "Hey, Jana, I think there's been a mistake. My land isn't part of your HOA." She paused like I just told her the earth was flat. "Well, we'll have to review that," she said. "Review what? Reality." Anyway, I hung up and thought, okay, cool, that's the end of it. Spoiler, it was not the end of it. Because soon enough, HOA reps started showing up in person on my land acting like they were on an episode of CSI, Country Edition. One guy came dressed in khakis and a tucked-in shirt, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon, just doing an inspection. He said, "Inspection of what?" "The squirrels. My land isn't under their control. They have no business stepping foot on it." But they kept pushing their imaginary boundaries further and further. One day I found tire tracks from a little HOA-branded golf cart on my property line. Let me repeat that. They drove their sandwich-sized golf cart onto my land like it was a battlefield vehicle. Then came the letters with more personality. Failure to comply with HOA review could result in fines. Fines? For what? Not living in their neighborhood hard enough. Another one said, "You may be violating community maintenance standards." Brother, my land has trees older than your entire HOA. I highly doubt their standards apply to 60-year-old pines. But this wasn't just letters. It got weirder. People reported seeing HOA board members walking around the edge of my property at night with flashlights. One neighbor told me he thought they were hunting for a lost dog. I told him, no. That is the HOA. They're probably measuring my dirt or something. And every time I tried to stay polite. I tried to stay patient. I tried to stay calm. I'd call and say, "Hey guys, I think you're confused. I'm not part of the HOA." But they would reply with things like, "Well, the boundaries are unclear. We're reviewing the plats. We're consulting legal guidance. We're forming a committee." Forming a committee is HOA. Language for, we're about to be annoying. But the real moment I knew things were getting out of hand was when I found two HOA reps with measuring tape, standing by my dock. They didn't even look surprised to see me. One of them just said, "We're just confirming distance from shoreline to structure." Confirming what? "This is my dock, built on my land, paid for with my money. You don't confirm anything except your way back to the neighborhood you came from." And still, I kept trying to be decent about it. I sent polite responses. I explained boundaries. I even printed out a copy of the county map with a big green highlighter circle around my land and dropped it off at their office like I was turning in homework. But the tension was rising. Every letter felt stronger. Every call sounded colder, and every visit felt more like they were preparing to take over. You ever watch a movie where the villain slowly edges closer and closer, and the hero keeps hoping they'll back off? That was me. Except the villain wore pastel cardigans and talked about community vision. Then came the final straw, a letter left on my door, not mailed. Not delivered, left, which means someone came up to my house to do it. It said, "This is your final warning to comply before further action is taken." Further action. From an HOA that has zero control over my land. Okay, now they were crossing lines. Literally and legally. For the first time, I felt real anger. Not annoyed, not irritated, angry. Because it was clear now that they weren't confused. They weren't mistaken. They were trying to push their authority onto me on purpose. They wanted control. And they were getting bold about it. But even then, even after all the trespassing, the threats, the creepy late-night walks, I still tried to handle things the grown-up way. The reasonable way. The calm way. Little did I know, I was dealing with an HOA that didn't understand calm, and they definitely didn't understand stop. Things were about to get a lot worse. And soon, they'd make the biggest mistake of their entire existence. I always thought the HOA was annoying. Like, leave trash cans out too long and they send a warning letter, annoying. But I had no idea they were capable of criminal mastermind energy until the day everything went off the rails. It started on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are bad days, already stuck between Monday stress and Wednesday hope, but this Tuesday really topped the charts. I was out on my land checking the south side of the lake when I saw something strange or random. Guy in a neon vest sticking little orange flags into the ground. Surveyor flags. Now, I didn't order any survey. I didn't hire anyone. I definitely didn't tell a stranger he could poke holes in my dirt. So I walked up and said the friendliest thing I could think of, "Hey man, what are you doing?" He looked up, all calm. Like this was the most normal thing in the world. Just marking boundary adjustments for the development project. Development what now? I told him, "Buddy, the only developing happening here is the weeds growing too fast." He blinked at me, confused. Then he pulled out a clipboard because surveyors love clipboards like HOA letters love rules, and showed me a document that made my heart drop into my boots. It said my land, my 1,500 acres, had been listed as community-controlled property under the Lakeside HOA. I stared at the paper so long I think my eyes stopped blinking. I felt my brain rebooting like a slow computer. Community-controlled property, my land. The land I own outright. The land that's been in my family longer than the whole president's hair dyed. No way. No flipping way. I told the surveyor, "There's been a mistake. A huge one. Like, your GPS took you to the wrong country, huge." He shrugged and said, "I'm just following the order. The developer said the HOA approved the sale." And that's when I realized something insane was happening behind my back. So I went straight home. Pulled up the county property records online, and nearly broke my chair when I saw it. The HOA had submitted paperwork showing that my land had been transferred to them as part of a community expansion vote. A vote? A vote? They held a vote about my property without telling me. That's like me voting to own your fridge. The documents said the vote was unanimous. Of course it was, because apparently the only people voting were the people who wanted to steal it. And get this, they had signed approval forms attached, except the signatures were faker than a free Gucci bag at a flea market. One signature was spelled wrong. Another one looked like it was written by someone using their non-dominant hand. One even had a little smiley face next to it. Yeah, a smiley face on a legal form. At this point, I was feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and the urge to punch a tree, but I needed more info, so I dug deeper. And that's when I saw the worst part. The HOA had sold my land to a private developer. Sold it at a price so low it made me question humanity. They basically gave it away. A 1,500-acre property worth millions, sold for what basically amounted to the cost of two nice cars and a fancy vacation. I couldn't believe it. I still can't. I picked up my phone and called the HOA office. The receptionist tried to act normal, like this was just another day in HOA land. I asked about the sale, and she said, "Oh, that issue has been settled through community channels." Community channels? Lady, I'm not part of your community. If anything, I'm the giant chunk of land keeping your mansions from sinking into the lake. I told her the paperwork was fake. She told me to contact the board for details, so I called 3 board members straight to voicemail. The president didn't answer. The vice president hung up on me. The treasurer said, "No comment. No comment. No comment on stealing my property." By this point I was so mad the mosquitoes were avoiding me. I needed answers, so I found the developer's on-site trailer and walked in like a man on a mission. The developer was inside, smiling like he'd just won the lottery. I guess buying stolen land for cheap will do that. When I asked why he thought he owned my property, he pulled up the same fake paperwork the HOA used. He said, "The HOA assured us everything was valid." I said, "Yeah, and I assure you it's not." I left before I said something that would earn me a criminal record. The minute I got home, I called a lawyer. Then another. Then another. I needed legal clarity fast because this was turning into something huge, something I never thought I'd deal with in my lifetime. I told each lawyer the same story, and each time they reacted the same way. They did what? That's when I knew I wasn't crazy. The HOA wasn't just being pushy. They'd crossed so many lines they were basically drawing their own map. My lawyer told me, "This is fraud. Straight up fraud. And you need to fight it now." Shock turned into fury. Fury turned into determination. They thought they could steal 1,500 acres from me. They thought they could fake signatures and hold shady votes. They thought I wouldn't find out until it was too late. Well, they thought wrong, and this was just the beginning. The moment I realized the HOA had sold my land like it was a used lawnmower on Facebook Marketplace, I knew I needed help. Real help. The kind that wears suits and charges by the hour. So, I did what any normal person would do during a crisis. I called every attorney within a 50-mile radius. The first lawyer I met with was this older guy named Harris. He had white hair, round glasses, and the kind of stare that makes you feel like he knows your secrets before you speak. I sat down, handed him the copy of the fake HOA paperwork, and waited. He stared at it for 5 full seconds, then looked up at me and said, "Son, this is garbage, not even illegal, not fraudulent, just straight up garbage." I liked him immediately. He explained that the HOA had absolutely zero authority over my land. Not a drop, not a sprinkle, nothing. My property is outside their subdivision, outside their covenants, outside their power. Their vote meant as much as a toddler voting himself president of the world. So, good news, I wasn't crazy. Bad news, I had stumbled onto a mess deeper than I expected. He told me I needed a real estate attorney, a land use attorney, and possibly a criminal attorney. Not for me, for them. Because forging signatures and selling land you don't own, yeah, that's called a crime in all 50 states. So off I went, meeting lawyer after lawyer. One had a massive beard. One had an office that smelled like old coffee. One had a cat on her desk that tried to sit on my paperwork. But every single one said the same thing: the HOA had no authority to sell your land. Not even a little, but that was the easy part. The hard part was figuring out how they pulled it off. That's when attorney number 4, this sharp woman named Rivera, asked me, "Have you looked into who processed the sale at the county office?" And that question, oh boy, that question opened the floodgates. She did some digging. And what she found made me sit back in my chair like I'd been hit with a surprise slap. It turns out a county clerk, someone who is supposed to protect property records with their life, had rubber-stamped the HOA's fake transfer document. The same document with the misspelled signatures and smiley face. Yeah, that document. Why did he approve it? Well, maybe because he suddenly had a brand new ATV sitting in his driveway 2 weeks earlier, paid in cash, from a community representative. Coincidence, sure, and I'm a unicorn. Then Rivera dug deeper, and she found something worse. The surveyor guy, the one sticking flags in my land like it was his personal arts and crafts project, had been paid under the table by the HOA. Not by the developer. By the HOA. They paid him to do the initial assessment for the land sale. But wait, there's more. She found internal HOA emails. Not polite ones. Not community update emails. These were emails between board members discussing how much money they could make if the developer bought my land and turned it into phase 2 of the lakeside luxury community. One email literally said, "Once development starts, our property values will skyrocket." Another one said, "We should secure our positions now before the vote." And the HOA president, he had a separate email where he talked about his consulting bonus from the developer. So let me break it down. They planned the land grab. They forged documents. They bribed a clerk. They paid a surveyor. And several board members were expecting to profit once the development kicked off. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't a mistake. This was a straight-up conspiracy. When Rivera told me everything, I just sat there in silence. Not because I was shocked they'd been acting shady for months, but because the level of stupidity mixed with boldness was actually impressive. These people really thought I would just never notice. They thought they could take 1,500 acres right out from under me and I'd be like, "Oh well, guess I'll just go fishing." I felt righteous anger building in my chest. Not the yell into a pillow kind. The "I am going to fix this and make every single person involved regret their life choices" kind. But I wasn't angry only for me. I was angry because they abused their positions. They stole HOA funds. They scammed their own community. They used county offices like they were ordering fast food. The more I learned, the worse it got. Rivera finally leaned back in her chair and said, "You have grounds for a lawsuit against the HOA, the board members individually, the developer, and the county clerk." That was the moment. The moment I stopped being confused and started being dangerous. Because at that point, it wasn't about land anymore. It wasn't about money either. It was about justice. It was about shutting down a corrupt HOA that thought it could bully people because it had shiny mansions and a fancy gated entrance. And I remember thinking, they messed with the wrong guy. And now it's payback time. Little did I know, the legal twist waiting for me next would flip the whole story upside down. When you find out an HOA has tried to steal your land, faked signatures, bribed people, and basically acted like they're starring in their own bargain-bin crime movie, there's only one thing left to do. You sue the life out of them. And that's exactly what I did. With 4 lawyers backing me up like some kind of legal Avengers team, I filed lawsuits against the HOA as an organization, the entire board as individuals, the developer, and the county clerk who approved the fake paperwork. If they were involved even a little, they got named. I wasn't playing around anymore. This wasn't be nice to the whole season. This was everyone gets served papers season. The court battle kicked off fast. And let me tell you, watching the HOA walk into court was beautiful. They came in looking like they had just realized crime actually does have consequences. The HOA president looked like he hadn't slept in days. The treasurer looked like he wanted to dissolve into mist and float away. The secretary kept adjusting her glasses like that would somehow erase the evidence. The developer strutted in like he still thought he'd win. That confidence didn't last long. Rivero, my lead attorney, came in smiling. Not a big smile, just the "we're about to barbecue these people" kind of smile. And boy, did she. Court was wild. Every day, something new came up. First, the forged signatures. The judge held the forms up and said, "Why does this signature have a smiley face?" Everyone turned to look at the HOA president. He mumbled something about unique signing habits. The judge raised an eyebrow so high it merely left his forehead. Then the bribe came up. The county clerk tried to claim the new ATV was a gift from his cousin. Rivera pulled out bank statements linking the payment straight to an HOA account. The whole courtroom went, "Ooh," like a middle school fight had just started. Then the unanimous HOA vote got exposed. Half the people whose names were used weren't even present at the meeting. One was on vacation in Alaska. Another one was in the hospital having surgery. And one homeowner testified, "I never voted on anything. I didn't even know we had meetings." Which is hilarious because she lived 3 houses down from the HOA president. The developer tried to argue that he wasn't irresponsible because he bought the land in good faith. Rivera hit him with, "So you didn't think it was weird when 1,500 acres were priced lower than a 6-car garage in your neighborhood?" He didn't respond, because he knew. They all knew. After weeks of hearings, cross-examinations, and the HOA trying and failing to look innocent, the judge finally made his ruling. He slammed the gavel and said, "The sale is null and void. Completely invalid." Boom. Just like that. My land was officially mine again. I felt relief wash over me like a good shower after a terrible day. But that relief didn't last long because the judge kept talking. Rivera looked at me and said, "They basically nuked their own rights. Beautiful, just beautiful, but it got even better. See, the HOA's lakefront homes all bragged about having private docks, exclusive water access, and elite shoreline amenities. These were $1 million features. They advertised in their listings, but according to the plat map, those docks, those walkways, those little stone paths with solar lights, they were all sitting on my strip. They had built docks on my land. They had run utility lines across my land. They had extended their fancy landscaping onto my land. Every single one was technically an encroachment." I leaned over the table and said, "So, if they built all this on my land, what does that mean for me?" Rivera's smile could have powered a small town. "It means," she said, "you now have the legal right to demand removal, or take ownership of the structures, take ownership of their docks, of their shoreline paths, of the access their mansions needed to stay lakefront." Let me explain how brutal this is. Luxury lakefront mansions are only lakefront if they have legal access to the shore, docks or boat slips, and compliant utility connections. Without those, they violate local building codes and zoning laws. Basically, no access equals no lakefront equals massive problem. Rivera pointed at the map again. "These properties depend on your land for shoreline access. Without it, they're in violation. You can force them into compliance, or take steps to claim the structures." I sat back in my chair like I'd just been handed the remote to the universe. "So, the HOA tried to steal my land, and ended up giving me power over their houses, pretty much," she said. "You ever laugh so hard you don't actually make noise?" That was me. I probably looked like a silent hyena. The irony was delicious. The HOA went from "your land belongs to us" to actually, "Sorry, our lakefront belongs to you." And I wasn't even trying to get revenge yet. This was just the natural chaos they created with their own stupidity. But wait, there's more. Utility lines powering their docks and lakeside lighting. They ran directly under the strip of land I owned. According to law, utilities crossing private land must have an easement or permission slip. The HOA didn't have one, because the only person who could give that permission was me. And I sure didn't remember giving it. Rivera handed me a folder and said, "This is everything you need if you want to move forward." Inside it was photos of the docks built on my land, copies of the original plat maps, documentation showing removal costs, spoiler, insanely high local building codes showing mansions must have legal shoreline access, and a list of homeowners who would be affected. It was like a menu of revenge options. And then Rivera said something that sealed the deal: if you choose to take action, the HOA can't stop you. They voided their protections the moment they filed that fake transfer. They basically handed you the hammer and put their own heads under it. I just nodded slowly, thinking about everything I'd been through. They lied. They trespassed. They faked signatures. They tried to take 1,500 acres that didn't belong to them. And in the end, they gave me the legal right to take the most valuable parts of their land. The docks, the shoreline, the access, the prestige that made their homes worth millions. Their own actions handed it to me, and I remember saying, half joking, half serious, they shouldn't have messed with me. Now they're gonna learn the hard way, because now, I wasn't just protecting my land, now I had the power, and trust me, I was about to use it. Once Rivera showed me the plat maps and explained how the HOA basically gift-wrapped their entire lakefront access and handed it to me, I knew I needed to lock everything down legally. No mistakes. No confusion. No "but we thought" excuses. I wanted everything official. So, I went on a hiring spree. First up, surveyors. Real surveyors. Not the random guy in a neon vest who accepted HOA bribe money and couldn't even put flags in straight lines. These new surveyors came in with actual equipment: tripods, GPS units, lasers, boots that weren't falling apart. Professionals. They walked the entire shoreline. The access paths, the dock areas, the little stone walkways, every square foot. They took photos, measurements, drone footage, elevation readings, probably even counted how many angry ducks were on the water. They were thorough while they surveyed. I also brought in a land use expert. This guy looked like he'd read every property law in the state twice. He kept muttering things like, "They really did this, and this is the worst planning I've ever seen." Hearing an expert say that about the HOA felt like music. Then, we got county officials involved. Not the crooked clerk, the legitimate people. They reviewed all the old plat maps and confirmed the nightmare for the HOA. Yes, I was the legal owner of the entire shoreline strip. Yes, the HOA had built over it illegally. Yes, the utility lines running under it were unauthorized. And yes, the lakefront mansions needed that access to stay code compliant. One county official even said, "This is the biggest land boundary screw-up I've seen in 20 years. I'd frame that quote if I could." Once everything was verified and double verified, my lawyers filed paperwork with the county. The paperwork officially asserted my ownership of the shoreline strip, my rights over the docks and access paths, my control of the easements the HOA had been using, and my authority over any utilities crossing the land. When I submitted everything, the county clerk, the non-bribed one, raised his eyebrows and said, "This is a lot." Yeah, it is. But then, oh man, the moment the HOA got the news, they lost it. First sign of panic, an emergency HOA meeting. Not a normal meeting, an emergency one. They were sweating when they break out the emergency snacks. I didn't even go. I didn't need to. My phone started blowing up within hours. I got emails, texts, voicemails. Even a handwritten letter delivered by someone who definitely didn't want to be the messenger. The first email was from the HOA president. It said, "We believe there's been a misunderstanding. Buddy, the only misunderstanding was you thinking you could steal from me." Then came the second email. "Perhaps we can arrange a meeting to discuss mutually beneficial solutions." Translation: "We messed up bad. Please fix it for us." I ignored that too. Next came the threatening letter. Of course. It always comes to that with HOA letters. This one said, "Your recent claims may violate community agreements." Community agreements with you? You mean the same HOA that forged my signature, please? Then the HOA treasurer called me personally. His voice was shaky, like he knew he was about to step barefoot on Legos. "Look," he said, "we're willing to negotiate. We can offer some compensation if you'll release the shoreline claim." I said, "How about this? Stop calling me." Click. I thought that was it. Nope. Next day, they sent a formal offer through email. "You want to hear the amount? You sure?" They offered me $25,000. $25,000 for a shoreline strip worth literal millions. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. I didn't bother responding. 2 days later, another email came, this one with way more panic in it. The HOA offered to rebuild positive relations and restore cooperation between neighbors. "Yeah, you should have thought about being good neighbors before you tried to steal 1,500 acres. I replied with one sentence, "I'm tired of playing nice." They didn't email again for 24 hours. Which is probably the longest the HOA president had ever gone without sending an email in his life. But the best part came a week later. Apparently the homeowners, especially the lakefront ones, found out about the encroachment, and when they learned their docks, access paths, and shorelines were sitting on land I now controlled legally, they went nuclear on the board. One homeowner emailed me directly, "Is it true we may lose dock access because of the HOA's actions?" I said, "Take it up with your HOA, because honestly, not my problem." More homeowners reached out, angry, confused, desperate. But I wasn't mad at them. Most didn't even know the HOA was pulling shady stuff. The board had been hiding everything. Still, I wasn't going to let their panic become my responsibility. I wasn't the bad guy here. I didn't start anything. I was just finishing it. My lawyers finished filing the final documents asserting full shoreline control, and when the county sent the official confirmation, I sat there holding the letter like it was a trophy, because now everything was official, everything was legal, everything was mine. The HOA could try to negotiate, they could beg, they could panic, they could write 10,000 angry emails. It didn't matter. I was done being patient, done being polite, done giving chances. Now I had control. Real control. And I knew exactly what I was going to do next. Once the county officially confirmed that I owned the shoreline strip and everything sitting on it, I knew exactly what I wanted to do next. I wanted to give the HOA a taste of the same nonsense they'd been serving me for months. Call it poetic justice. Call it petty revenge. Call it community involvement. Honestly, call it whatever you want. I was ready. See, the HOA loved sending violation letters. They sent them for everything: mailboxes, grass, paint shades, trash can placement. They probably sent one once because a homeowner's garden gnome was too smug looking. Who knows? So I thought, if the HOA enjoys violations so much, why not help them experience the thrill themselves? My lawyers and I drafted official notices, real ones, legally backed, and sent them to the HOA and every homeowner with shoreline encroachments. The first notice stated, "You are in violation for maintaining private docks on land not owned by you." The second notice, "Unauthorized structures detected on private property. Removal or legal remedy required." The third, "Utility lines crossing private land without easement approval. Immediate action needed." And after that, I sat back and waited. It didn't take long. The HOA president called me so fast it was like he'd been sitting there refreshing his inbox, waiting for his next crisis. He didn't even say hello. "What is this?" he snapped. "A violation notice," I said, sipping my coffee. "You know, like the ones you glued to my door every month." He was fuming. I could practically hear his blood pressure climbing. "You can't do this." "Oh, but I can," I said, and I did. He hung up. I'm pretty sure he threw his phone afterward. Then the homeowners got their notices, and that's when the real chaos started. Remember, these were not regular houses. These were million-dollar lakefront mansions. People who paid crazy amounts of money to have private docks, easy water access, and perfect shorelines. Now they were being told those docks were illegal on land they didn't own because of an HOA they trusted. Some homeowners tried to act calm. They emailed me politely, asking for clarification. Others weren't so polite. I got messages like, "This must be a mistake. This isn't fair. You can't just take our ducks. I pay HOA dues. This shouldn't happen." One guy even wrote, "This is harassment." I replied, "Take it up with your HOA, because honestly, it was their HOA's fault." Meanwhile, the whole board was melting down from the inside. Word spread fast. And suddenly every homeowner was demanding answers. Imagine a room full of angry millionaires shouting at a board that barely understands how to run a bake sale, let alone a shoreline. That's basically what happened. I heard from one homeowner friend that the board meeting got so wild someone actually pounded on the table and yelled, "You let who build what on WHOSE land?" The whole president blamed the secretary blamed the treasurer blamed old documents, someone blamed the original developer, someone else blamed map confusion. One guy blamed the lake, which honestly didn't even make sense. It was pure chaos, cinema-worthy chaos. And it got worse, because after the violation letters, my lawyers filed formal demands requiring the HOA to remove illegal docks or pay rent for them, tear up encroaching landscaping, relocate utility lines, and restore shoreline areas that were altered. The repair costs millions, literal millions. When homeowners got the estimated numbers, they went from angry to straight-up panicked. I'm talking full-on meltdown levels. Some blamed the board, some blamed the former board, some blamed the developer who built the neighborhood. One guy blamed bad energy, someone else blamed Mercury retrograde. People were pointing fingers like they were in a crime show. Soon enough, the HOA sent me a giant email titled "Urgent Request for Discussion." They begged for a meeting. They begged to resolve issues peacefully. They begged to avoid unnecessary conflict. They even offered to reach a compromise that benefits both parties. After everything they'd done, after trying to steal 1,500 acres, after fake signatures, trespassing, bribing officials, and threatening me, I sent a simple reply. I told you I'm tired of playing nice. That line hit them harder than any lawsuit. Because it meant one thing: I wasn't giving up the land. I wasn't backing down. I wasn't settling. At this point, homeowners started showing up at HOA offices demanding to know what the board planned to do. Some even threatened to sue the HOA themselves. One homeowner reportedly shouted, "If I lose my dock, I'm suing every one of you and your dogs." I shouldn't laugh, but I did. Because for the first time ever, the HOA was feeling exactly what they tried to make me feel: powerless, frustrated, cornered, and out of options. All because they poked the wrong bear. And the best part, this wasn't even the end. I had power over the lakefront, over their docks, over their access, over their utilities, over the prestige that kept their home values sky high. And they were finally realizing it. The tension in the community was boiling over. People were furious. The board was panicking. The whole place felt like it was about to explode. And me, I was just getting started. Once the violation notices hit the HOA like a truck made of legal paperwork, the board figured I would eventually chill out. Maybe they thought I'd get bored. Maybe they thought I'd feel bad for the poor little HOA. See? When it comes to land rights, there's a little thing called enforcement. And lucky for me, there was an obscure state law barely known, barely used that let landowners place liens on any property that refuses to fix an encroachment. Guess what the HOA refused to fix? Everything. I gave them deadlines. I gave them reminders. I even gave them a polite warning that said, "Please remove all structures from my land or compensation will be enforced." Their response: more threatening letters, more denial, more "you can't do this." It was adorable, honestly. So my lawyers and I filed official liens one by one on every mansion whose dock, walkway, landscaping, or utilities were on my shoreline strip. And that was basically all the lakefront homes. Their pride and joy. Their crown jewels. A lien is like a giant legal sticker that says, "You can't sell this house. You can't refinance this house. You can't do anything with this house until you deal with this problem." And when I say homeowners lost their minds, I mean lost their minds. Some homeowners were furious. Some were terrified. Some were confused because they didn't even know what a lien was until that moment. One guy emailed me at 3 a.m. Is this real? Am I in trouble? Is my house in danger? Yes. Yes, it was. But here's the thing. Liens weren't even the final step. When an encroachment lien isn't cleared, when the homeowner refuses to fix the issue or pay damages, the property becomes eligible for forced sale through the court. Meaning the home can be auctioned off. And guess what the HOA did? Did they try to comply? Apologize, fix the docs, negotiate like adults? Nope. They doubled down like maniacs. They sent out a community email telling homeowners not to talk to me, not to believe me, and to trust the board. The same board that caused the whole disaster. Bad move, very bad move. Because by refusing to comply, the violations didn't go away, they got worse. And after a certain number of days, the liens matured into legal grounds for forced sale. I wasn't guessing. I wasn't hoping. This was written in the law like a recipe, so we filed the petitions. We went through the court process. The judge reviewed everything and said, these properties are out of compliance and eligible for auction. Boom, just like that. And when the homeowners found out, oh boy, half the community lawyered up, not against me, against the HOA. They sued the board for negligence, mismanagement, fraud, and basically every terrible thing you can accuse an HOA of. One homeowner even shouted during a meeting, "You're the reason my dock is illegally sitting on someone else's land. How does that even happen?" The treasurer blamed the developer blamed the original plat maps, the secretary blamed communication issues. The whole president blamed unexpected circumstances. Yeah, unexpected circumstances named me. Meanwhile, I started the official acquisition process for the first mansion. It felt unreal. I was about to legally take ownership of a multi-million-dollar lakefront home. All because the HOA refused to pull a dock off land they didn't own. Wild. The whole president tried to stop the auction. Of course. He filed appeals, motions, emergency requests. He even tried to argue that the shoreline is spiritually part of the community. Spiritually, sir. This is court, not yoga class. The judge rejected every request they filed, and when the first mansion went to auction, guess who showed up? A crowd. Reporters, angry homeowners, half the whole board, my lawyers, and me, standing there sipping iced tea like this was the world's most dramatic yard sale. The bidding was quick, and the final result, I won, for way less than the home was worth. And when that happened, the whole board completely unraveled. The president resigned, the treasurer disappeared literally disappeared. Nobody could reach him. The secretary stepped down crying. Two board members tried to blame each other so hard it looked like a cartoon fight. Meanwhile, homeowners were filing more lawsuits left and right. The whole office turned into a disaster zone. Late-night meetings, frantic emails, people shouting in the parking lot. It was chaos. And all the while, more liens matured, more homes became eligible for auction. More owners realized they were losing their million-dollar investments because the whole thought they could bully me. The crazy part, I didn't even need to be mean. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to threaten anyone. All I did was use the same rules the HOA tried to use against me. Their game, their style, their energy. Except this time, it was legal. And it was justified. And it was hitting them harder than they ever expected. By the time the dust settled, the HOA wasn't just struggling, it was collapsing. And me, I was just getting started. Because now that I own a mansion on their shoreline, I had even more power. The HOA came after my 1,500 acres, and now I was taking their empire one mansion at a time. Owning one lakefront mansion was wild enough. I mean, I went from guy with land to guy with a mansion almost overnight. But after the first forced sale, more liens matured, more violations stacked up, and more properties became eligible for auction. And that's when it hit me, why not list them all? These weren't little starter homes. These were $10 million lakefront monsters built with heated floors, movie rooms, and wine cellars big enough to fit my old pickup truck. And now, thanks to the HOA's genius-level stupidity, they were legally slipping into my hands like someone accidentally giving me their wallet and saying, "Hold this forever." So I told my lawyers, let's put them up for public auction. All of them. They stared at me like I just declared myself the new king of the lake. Then they nodded. The first step was official notice. We posted legal announcements, county auction forms, and public listings the moment those notices hit the county website. The community exploded, and I mean exploded. Homeowners started calling each other at lightning speed. People were knocking on doors yelling, "Did you see this?" One rich guy apparently ran out of his house in slippers screaming at his lawn crew like they were responsible. The HOA board, what was left of it, called an emergency meeting. Again, they were holding more emergency meetings than the fire department at that point. But the panic really went nuclear when the first listing went live online. Luxury lakefront estate auction. Starting bid, $1 million. See, these homes were worth 5 times that, maybe more. And I was listing them at auction prices. Completely legal, completely allowed, completely hilarious. Suddenly, the quiet neighborhood turned into a reality TV show. You had people crying in their driveways, people yelling on the phone, people calling their lawyers, people calling my lawyers, realtors showing up like vultures in suits. One homeowner wrote me an email that said, "You're ruining our community." I replied, "I'm following the rules you all told me to respect," because honestly, I was. They were the ones who once sent me a letter saying, "All rules must be followed as written." Well, guess what? I was following the rules exactly as written. No more, no less. Things got even crazier when the media caught wind of it. Yep. Local news vans rolled into the neighborhood like they were covering a natural disaster. Reporters popped up with microphones, asking questions like, "Sir, is it true entire mansions are being auctioned due to improper land use? Is this the biggest HOA scandal in the state? How did the HOA lose control of the shoreline?" Neighbors tried to block cameras. HOA members tried to hide behind bushes. It didn't work. One reporter found me standing near the lake, drinking a soda. She asked, "Is it true you're the one selling the mansions?" I nodded and said, "Just following the law. Clean. Simple. Perfect." And the clip went viral. Then came auction day. People showed up from everywhere: investors, curiosity seekers, rich folks who smelled a deal, and a bunch of locals who just wanted to see chaos unfold live. The whole president, well, the former president, showed up sweating like he'd run a marathon. He tried to talk to bidders. He tried to talk to me. He tried to talk to the auctioneer. Nobody cared. Nobody listened. The auctioneer started the bidding with a voice that sounded like dollar signs. "Do I hear 2 million, 2 million, 2.5, 3. Hands went up fast. Money moved even faster. The homeowners stood off to the side, watching strangers claim houses they thought they'd pass down to their kids one day. Some were angry. Some were devastated. Some were filming it because they wanted proof for their lawsuits against the HOA. And me. I stood there calm, hands in my pockets, watching everything unfold like a man who had finally gotten justice. Because let's be real, this wasn't just payback. This was balance. The very people who tried to steal my land were now losing their most valuable assets. Not because I was being cruel. Not because I wanted to hurt them. But because the HOA had broken the law, ignored every warning, and treated me like some clueless fool they could bully. As the gavel slammed down for the first home sold for millions, I felt something I hadn't felt in months: relief, satisfaction, closure. Then came the next mansion. And the next. And the next. Every sale was another reminder to the HOA. They created this. They caused this. They brought it all on themselves. After the last home was auctioned, I got in my truck, started the engine, and just sat there for a second. Not smiling. Not gloating. Just calm. Because finally, after everything, the score was settled. They tried to take from me. And in the end, I took from them legally. Millions of dollars in property. A shoreline they depended on. And the power they abused for years. For the first time since the whole mess started, I felt free. And the whole. Well, they were about to face something even worse. Their own collapse. After the mansions were sold off like designer bags at a clearance sale, the whole went from fancy and annoying to barely alive and panicking. HOA letters run on money dues, fees, fines, administration charges, and whatever extra nonsense they slip into those invoices they mail out. But when all your million-dollar homes disappear, yeah. So does your funding. The HOA's bank account dried up faster than a puddle in summer. With half their houses gone, and the other half tied up in lawsuits, they couldn't afford anything, not maintenance, not legal defense. Not even the fancy coffee machine they bragged about in meetings. And the homeowners, oh, they weren't done. If the whole thought I was their biggest problem. They had no idea what was coming next. The lakefront residents who now had their houses at auction or saddled with liens decided to sue the HOA into oblivion. And I'm talking real lawsuits. Not angry letter lawsuits. I mean big, angry, lawyer-packed lawsuits with names like negligence and mismanagement, failure to maintain legal boundaries, fraudulent use of HOA funds, property value destruction, and my personal favorite, gross incompetence. The whole board tried to fight back. But they didn't have the money for attorneys. One homeowner even said, if the HOA wants to defend itself, they can sell their office furniture. The board held another emergency meeting because of course they did. People walked out crying. People stormed out yelling. Two board members tried to resign at the same time and bumped into each other in the doorway. Total meltdown. Meanwhile, the county had been watching everything unfold. Between the legal land sale, the forged signatures, the bribed clerk, and the absolute circus the HOA created, the county officials looked like they were done babysitting. One day, I got a copy of a notice that said, due to gross mismanagement and unlawful activities, the Lakeside HOA is hereby scheduled for dissolution pending final review. Translation: the HOA was basically getting fired. And honestly, I can't blame the county. If an HOA can't figure out where the property line is or that forgery is illegal, they really don't need to be running a community. The county reviewed everything for weeks, digging through documents, bank records, minutes from meetings, and probably a few cat emails about mailbox paint colors. When they were done, they announced their final decision. The HOA was officially dissolved, permanently. You could hear the cheers from homeowners all the way across the lake. Some popped champagne, some burned old violation letters in fire pits. One guy reportedly blasted "We Are the Champions" on his outdoor speakers at full volume. With the HOA gone, all their authority disappeared, their rules dissolved, their accounts were frozen, their office closed. Their power went POF like a magic trick, but with more paperwork. But the true finale came when the legal system turned its attention to the people responsible. The former board members. The same ones who approved fake paperwork, bribed a county clerk, lied to the homeowners, tried to steal 1,500 acres, and used HOA money like it came from a magical piggy bank. Yeah. Them. One by one, they were called in for questioning. And one by one, they tried to blame each other like kids caught stealing cookies. It wasn't me. She told me to sign it. I thought it was a suggestion. I didn't know it was illegal. Though I didn't know it was illegal excuse was used so many times that even the judge looked tired of it. And then the charges came. The whole president got charged with fraud and document tampering. The treasurer got charged with misappropriation of funds. The secretary got hit with filing false records. The vice president got charged with conspiracy to commit property fraud. Even the surveyor who took the bribe got nailed for professional misconduct. The county clerk, yeah. He lost his job and faced charges for accepting bribes. Should have enjoyed that ATV while he could. Suddenly, the same people who spent years telling homeowners how to trim their bushes were now dealing with real legal problems. The kind you don't solve by forming a committee. Watching them finally face consequences felt good, not evil good. Just justice finally arrived good, because they weren't just strict or annoying. They were criminals hiding behind clipboards and community rules. They abused their power nonstop, thinking no one would ever fight back. But they picked the wrong person. They messed with the wrong land. And they played the wrong game. With the HOA dissolved, the lawsuits flying, and the board members heading into courtrooms instead of boardrooms, the community began to settle into its new reality. No HOA. No fines. No violation letters. No threats. Just a normal neighborhood trying to recover from the biggest HOA disaster the county had ever seen. And me, I finally got some peace. No more letters. No more calls. No more people sneaking onto my land pretending to measure soil. The whole battle had been long, messy, stressful, chaotic, but finally, justice had caught up with them. And the best part? This wasn't even the final step. The developer, the shady guy who tried to buy my land, was next on the list, with the HOA officially flattened like a pancake under a steamroller. The next target on the list practically walked into the spotlight on his own, the developer. The same guy who strutted around like he owned half the county. The same guy who thought he could buy my 1,500 acres for pennies and then flip it into a luxury extension of his little mansion kingdom. The same guy who smiled at me like we were partners even though he was literally standing on stolen land. Well, his day finally came. See, when the HOA collapsed, all their dirty secrets spilled out like someone dropped a bucket of marbles down a staircase. And right in the middle of that mess was the developer's name, highlighted, circled, underlined, and basically glowing like a neon sign. He wasn't just a victim of the HOA's stupidity. He was in on it. Emails, payment records, internal memos, everything pointed to the developer being knee-deep in the scheme. He wanted my land. He needed my land. The HOA promised him easy access. He agreed to a shady consulting bonus for board members. And he was perfectly fine pretending everything was legit as long as he got his shiny new project started. But now everyone saw him for what he really was. The legal trouble starts. My lawyers wasted no time. They filed a civil suit against him for participating in illegal land acquisition, knowingly accepting fraudulent documents, attempting to build on property not legally purchased, and colluding with HOA members who were already in hot water. And the judge took one look and said, "Yep, this needs to go to court." When the developer got his summons, he tried to act calm. You know that fake calm people do when they're actually panicking inside. That was him. He tried to spin the story like he was just caught in the middle, like the HOA had tricked him. But the evidence, oh man, the evidence did not support that. We had shady emails, suspicious payments, his signature on documents he claimed he never saw before, and even a text message where he wrote, "The guy with the land won't cause trouble." The HOA said he's easy to deal with. Or really, I framed that message in my head. The county, meanwhile, was furious. They launched their own investigation. Turns out the developer had cut corners before, nothing huge, but enough to show a pattern. Late registration filings, sketchy permit requests, maybe using creative math for land valuations. This time, though, he wasn't slipping out of anything. The dominoes fall once word spread that he was part of the fraudulent land sale. The dominoes started falling fast. Construction companies pulled out. No one wanted to be linked to someone who was under investigation for property fraud. Future investors backed out. They took one look at the lawsuits and said, "Yeah, no thanks." Banks froze funding. Banks don't play around with suspicious land deals. Partner companies canceled contracts. Nobody wants to ride a sinking ship. And trust me, his ship wasn't just sinking. It was exploding, flipping, catching fire, and sinking again. Suddenly the guy who walked around like he owned the lake couldn't even convince a landscaping company to return his calls. The court hearing, when we finally got to the courtroom, the energy was interesting. The developer came in wearing an expensive suit, trying to look confident. But his tie was crooked, his hair was messy, and he looked like he'd been sleeping on legal documents instead of pillows. Rivera leaned over to me and whispered, "He's scared." Good. The judge walked in and didn't waste time. "This case involves fraud, document tampering, And illegal land transfer. Let's begin. The developer's lawyer tried every excuse in the book. He didn't know the documents were fake. He trusted the HOA. He believed the transfer was valid. But then Rivera stood up with her binder of doom. She presented emails showing he knew the price was suspiciously low, messages discussing accelerating the HOA vote, proof he made side payments to certain board members, records of him pressuring surveyors to move fast, and the best part, a recorded call where he said, as long as the HOA signs off, nobody's going to dig into the details. Oops. The judge paused after hearing that. Then he sighed like he'd just aged 10 years. When it was all over, the ruling was crystal clear. The developer was guilty of participating in an illegal land transaction. The consequences: 1. Civil damages. He was ordered to pay punitive damages to me, big ones. Enough to cover legal fees, lost time, stress, the cost of surveyors, and basically every inconvenience he caused. The amount was so high he almost fell out of his chair. 2. Restitution to homeowners. The homeowners who sued him, they won too. He had to compensate them for lost home value due to his actions with the HOA. One of the homeowners who hated him the most whispered, "Justice tastes delicious," while smiling like a person who just won the lottery. 3. Licensing trouble. Because of the fraud ruling, the state board opened a review of his development license. Let me translate that: his career was now hanging by a thread made of dental floss. 4. Reputation destruction. His name hit the news. Local papers wrote headlines like, "Developer implicated in HOA fraud scandal, land grab gone wrong. Lakeside project crumbles after illegal deal." He was done. Everywhere he went, people whispered. Even his business partners ghosted him like a bad Tinder date. The final blow: a month after the ruling, I drove past the construction zone he'd set up. It was empty. No workers, no trucks, no machinery. Just a half-built sign that said, "Future site of Lakeside Luxury Phase 2. Someone had crossed out luxury and wrote losers in spray paint. I'm not saying it was me, but it wasn't not me. A week later, he officially announced he was abandoning the entire project. Not delaying, not pausing, not revising. Completely abandoning it. He pulled out of the region, shut down his office, and vanished from the community overnight like a businessman version of Bigfoot. And honestly, good. He tried to steal my land. He thought I'd stay quiet. He thought the HOA would shield him. He thought I'd be easy to deal with. But in the end, he lost the project, his reputation, millions of dollars, and any chance of building in the area again, and me. I walked away with a settlement so big it made my bank app glitch. It wasn't just a win. It was a message. You mess with me, you pay for it. With the HOA destroyed, the developer gone, and the lawsuits behind me, things finally went quiet. Like, really quiet. The kind of quiet where you walk outside and hear birds instead of HOA board members arguing about grass length for the first time in months. I stepped onto my land and didn't feel stress tightening my shoulders. It felt like breathing fresh air after living in a room full of burnt popcorn smell. My land, all 1,500 acres of it, was officially, legally, peacefully mine again. No forged signatures. No shady surveys. No HOA spies lurking behind bushes with clipboards. Just the land my family passed down, and me standing on it like things were finally normal. Getting my land back under control. One of the first things I did was walk the entire shoreline strip the HOA messed with. The illegal docks were gone. The trespassing signs were gone. Even the HOA's little decorative rocks, the ones that look like they belong in a garden magazine, were gone. It was back to being simple, quiet, natural. I hired a few people not to develop anything, but to clean up, remove leftover debris from the docks, restore shoreline plants that the HOA's landscapers ripped out, repair soil where heavy equipment rolled over it. Nothing fancy, just undoing the chaos. The place looked better within a week. By a month, it looked alive again. And every time I walked those trails, I felt something I didn't expect: pride. This land survived everything: greedy people, shady deals, illegal nonsense, and it was still standing strong. Honestly, tougher than I was. Deciding what to do with the property, people kept asking me the same question. So what are you gonna do with the land now? I'd laugh and say, something that doesn't involve an HOA. But really, I had options. I could develop it. Tourist cabins, campgrounds, rentals, fishing areas, easy money. The lakefront alone could turn into a dream vacation spot. I could sell a portion. Not to developers, obviously. I'd rather eat gravel. But to conservation groups or families who wanted quiet land. Or, I could leave it. Let it be what it's always been. Peaceful, wild, mine. In the end, I picked a mix of all three. I set aside a huge chunk of the land for conservation. No building, no clearing, nothing. Just nature doing its thing. A local conservation organization was thrilled. They said it was a meaningful act of environmental stewardship. I said, I'm just tired of people messing with it. Then I picked a spot near the lake and built myself a small cabin, nothing big. Just a simple place with a porch, some rocking chairs, and a fire pit where I could sit at night and roast marshmallows without worrying about some whole guy popping out of the trees yelling, "That flame is too bright," and the rest. I let it stay the way my granddad kept it, open, peaceful, and full of memories. The community's reaction: you'd think people would hate me for taking mansions and shaking the community upside down. But surprisingly, a lot of folks treated me like some kind of folklore hero. I couldn't go into town without someone saying, "You're the guy who took down the HOA, right?" Or, "Thank you for getting rid of those board members. They fined me once for leaving my trash." Been out for 10 minutes. People literally bought me coffee. One lady baked me cookies. A guy from the next town over shook my hand so hard I thought he'd detach it. It was like I had become the unofficial mascot of revenge done right. And honestly, it felt good. The community didn't need an HOA. They figured out a new system: neighbor committees, simple agreements, actual communication like normal humans. No more fines. No more threats. No more drama. They still joke about it sometimes. They say things like, "Don't mess with him, he'll take your house." I laugh every time, but they're not entirely wrong. The symbolic ending: walking the lakefront one evening, when everything had finally settled. I walked down to the lake. The sun was setting, turning the water orange and gold. The trees were quiet, the breeze was cool, and not a single luxury mansion blocked the view. I walked along the shoreline, the very shoreline the HOA once claimed was community-controlled. My boots crunched on the gravel. The lake rippled softly. And I felt peace. Real peace. I reached the end of the strip, sat on a rock, and just took in the silence. No court cases. No angry emails. No fake votes. No hole breathing down my neck. Just me and the land that had been mine all along. I looked out at the water and thought, they tried to take everything from me, and ended up handing me more than I ever imagined. In that moment, I realized the final truth: they didn't just lose. I didn't just win. I restored the land. I protected it. And I walked away stronger than when everything started. I stood up, brushed off my jeans, and walked back toward my cabin, knowing one thing for sure: this time, the land was safe. And no HOA would ever touch it again. After everything that happened, the lawsuits, the liens, the auctions, the whole meltdown, the developer's downfall, you'd think I'd be tired, stressed, or at least ready to crawl into a cave and sleep for a month. But honestly, I felt calm. Not that I need a nap kind of calm, that I survived a storm, and now the sky looks clearer than ever kind of calm. One morning, I walked out onto my porch, looked out over the lake, and thought about the whole mess from start to finish. It almost didn't feel real. It felt like one of those stories people tell around campfires, too crazy to be true, too dramatic for real life. But it was real. And I walked every step of it. Looking back at the chaos when it first started, I never imagined things would go so far. I thought the HOA was just annoying. I thought the developer was just another greedy businessman. I thought the county clerk was just a guy with too much paperwork. But the truth: People with a little bit of power and no accountability can cause a whole lot of damage. And if you don't stand up for yourself, they'll take everything they can reach. The HOA abused its power. The board thought they were untouchable. The developer thought he could cheat the system. And everyone thought I'd just roll over and accept it. They had no idea who they were messing with. Lesson number 1, HOA power is only power if you let it be. Look, I'm not saying every HOA is evil. Some are fine. Some keep neighborhoods clean and help people out. But some act like they're running a tiny dictatorship with matching polo shirts. The Lakeside HOA thought their little rulebook made them kings. They forgot something important. Their power ends where my property begins. They tried to extend their control past their boundaries. They tried to pretend they had authority they never actually had. And when that didn't work, they tried to cheat. But the truth is simple. If an HOA ever tries to push past what's legal, you can stop them. You just have to know your rights and refuse to be bullied. Lesson number 2, land rights matter more than most people realize. Land isn't just dirt and trees. It's history. It's value. It's freedom. It's everything people build their lives on. My land was in my family for generations. It wasn't just property, it was legacy. And watching strangers try to rip it away with fake signatures and shady votes lit a fire in me I didn't even know I had. Land rights are serious. Plat maps matter. Boundaries matter. Easements matter. People laugh at property paperwork until someone tries to steal their land. Then suddenly everyone becomes a legal expert. If I learned anything, it's that you should always know your property lines, know your easements, know your rights, and never trust an HOA with a photocopier. Lesson number 3, corruption thrives when nobody fights back. The more evidence we found, the clearer it became. The HOA didn't mess up accidentally. The developer didn't get confused. The clerk didn't make a small mistake. They planned it. They worked together. They counted on nobody noticing. They counted on me being quiet. Corruption grows when people look the other way. It grows when people think it's not worth fighting. It grows when people assume they must know what they're doing. But when you push back, really push back, corruption crumbles faster than a stale cookie. Lesson number 4, know the law better than the people who misuse it. When the HOA told me we're just following the law, I took that personally. So I followed the law to every page, every line, every dusty old clause hiding in the back of the rulebook. Turns out, the law actually protected me more than them. The plot maps saved me. The easement rules saved me. The encroachment laws saved me. The forced sale statute really saved me. Sometimes, you win not by fighting harder, but by being smarter. The communities take after everything. People treated me like the unofficial sheriff of the lake. Folks would wave at me in town like I was some kind of vigilante hero. That's the guy who took down the HOA. He saved the lakefront. He made the board resign. He's the reason those crooks are in court. I didn't need the praise, but hearing it felt good. Because for months, the HOA made me feel small. Like I didn't matter. Like my land didn't matter. But in the end, the truth won. A walk along the lake one evening, I walked the lakefront alone. The water was calm. The sky was turning purple. Little ripples spread across the surface like the lake was breathing. This was the shoreline the HOA fought so hard to control. The same one they trespassed on. The same one they tried to steal. And now, every inch of it belonged to me. I walked slow, letting the peace sink in. Letting the victory settle. Feeling the land under my feet like it was grounding me. And I whispered to myself, quiet, but confident, they sold my land illegally. I sold their mansions legally. Fair is fair. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. Real closure. The kind you feel in your bones. The kind that lets you move on knowing you fought the right fight and won the right way. And with that final walk along the lake, the whole crazy story finally felt complete.